and good afternoon, everybody. It's Maria Davis here with Business Acceleration Playbook, where we're bringing you the plays that you need to win in your business. And I'm joined by my lovely co-host Angela Buckley and Chanel Rose. Ray will be on shortly. He's run a little bit behind, but we do have our guest Johnny Anton. Peekaboo there. So he's joining us today. For where are you at? Where are you joining us from?
Sunny San Diego.
Sunny San Diego. I'm in Gray, Ohio, so I'm pretty jealous. So that's okay.
I'm from the Midwest. I spent 21 years born and raised in Detroit, so I know what that weather feels like.
Yeah, you're like, I'm out of here. I'm gone. So go ahead and tell everybody that don't know who you are just a little bit about you, and then we'll just kind of dive in and get to know each other.
Yeah, everyone always thank you for having me, Maria, Angela, Chanel. Nice to meet you, ladies. You guys look like you're ready to have some fun. So, well, I know I have like a big old red beard. It's the first thing people see. So they always like, oh, he's some nice Irish guy. Actually, my family are Middle Eastern Christians from Iraq. We're refugees that came here in the 80s and 90s. And so, my family escaped religious persecution and lived in Jordan and Lebanon in refugee camps with no running water, no electricity. And thank God for the United States military. They gave us religious asylum back in the 80s. And so my family got freedom. And it's funny because we went from a war-torn country to one of the most dangerous parts of Detroit is where we first moved to. And so my mom worked in a liquor store for 25 plus years, with 4-inch bulletproof glass. And it was not easy growing up, but I quickly learned how to, get to know people and to diffuse situations because it was hostile environments growing up for my parents and myself. And that's why I love communication, why I love sales, and why I love help create sales leaders in the world. And so I own a sales consultancy called Close With Us, and we a percentage of all of our profits goes to write a check to my nonprofit, which is ThroughYou. We build schools, water wells. We don't just write checks. We actually go out there and build the schools with our hands, and we invite entrepreneurs like you ladies and Ray here coming in. We invite them to come with us and roll up their sleeves and be like how my parents were in these villages with no running water and no electricity. And so we built a school in Malawi, Africa. We built a school in Guatemala, near the Mexican border in the northwest of Guatemala in a village. And we've also built a water well in Dominican Republic. And then we funded money during COVID for Senegal, for a school in Senegal, but we didn't get a chance to actually go out there and build it because of the global crisis. But yeah, that's what I'm passionate about is contribution. It wasn't until I started doing the contributive stuff that sales became effortless to me because I stopped trying to chase the sale and be attached to the sale. So the big thing I teach sales reps in the internet marketing space and business owners is just how to detach yourself from the outcome and really be about people and putting people first and profit second and adopting the new paradigm of selling, which is really just building that connection, that deep connection where, there's just no reason to like force people to buy your stuff. And so I'm against hard selling and I'm against, pushing people or convincing people. I really feel like that's a survival context that we inherit because we grow up in, intuitively and intrinsically, we believe life is dangerous. And so, it's the first thing I teach people is to go from a survival paradigm with your language patterns to a mission driven, a purpose driven, a create life, create abundance, create connections and create collaboration, create partnership. And so I'm really, really big on teaching salespeople on how to become, very good communicators, not just on the phone or in sales conversations, but in their personal life. And so, we're on a mission to turn people into leaders, and leaders are not about authority or I'm better than you, or I have all this cool nonprofit stuff, so I'm a better person. It's not about that. It's about actually being someone who's committed to growth, committed to connection, committed to making a difference with people every single day, not just in your job, being one person here and being someone else there. It's being truly authentic and true to yourself. And also, authentic doesn't mean radically saying whatever you want. That's a big misconception in our society that, I'm authentic, I say what I want. No, being authentic is about being conscious and being aware of where you've been inauthentic to other people and bringing that to the surface, to the conscious, so you can do something about it. And so I'm all about raising consciousness and making people feel empowered and not leaving people disempowered, because people matter. People want love. People want to feel important. People want to grow and expand. And it's our job as humans to push that consciousness. And I just have found a way to make it sound sexy through sales training and recruiting salespeople to your organization and making your sales conversions go up, because that's marketing and everybody wants to buy that stuff. Nobody wants to buy me saying, hey, you should really have your sales reps go do some nonprofit work because it'll change their mentality, right? Like, that's not going to work, right? So I kind of just mask all the leadership and all the growth and contribution stuff inside of my products and services and have people kind of just do it over time in a natural perspective. But I'm happy to be here, happy to contribute, happy to listen to what your audience needs. And I want it to be as little about me and more about adding value and servicing people who watch this show. And wherever I can do that, a mentor taught me that I'm only as valuable as how much value I put out, right? So I want to help anyone who's on this call that needs help with sales, who maybe is forcing things in relationships. Although I'm not a relationship coach, I do feel like at times I am a relationship coach to my sales reps, because a lot of times they have a tough relationship where they withhold and they convince and they overpower and they avoid, and they have all these survival paradigms in the way they communicate, in the way they show up for their business owner, for their significant other, their brother, sister, cousin. And so I want to alter people's communication. That's what I was put on this planet to do. And it came from me having a lot of money in my 20s, making lots of money with commissions, but just being poor in spirit and poor in relationships. And so I had to really work on myself and get better and work through my toxicity and my communication and really learn how to respond better to situations. And so that's just a little bit about me, what I'm committed to. And I'm very happy and excited and passionate about being here. So thank you for having me on.
That's awesome. And I've heard a lot of your story, and I think Chanel was saying before she came on that she's been cyber stalking you, so she probably knew a lot of it too. But I used the term cyber stalking. She didn't, just but so she was kind of studying a little bit about you. But Angela and Ray, I don't know if you had a chance to look up anything on Johnny or not, but I'll go ahead and let you all start. We'll start with Angela and then go to Ray, just to kind of, I would like you all to ask some questions since I've had a full discussion with Johnny before. All the
Maria.
Okay,
so Johnny, thank you so much for telling us a little bit about your history and your story. I really appreciate hearing all those experiences and how that comes to build who you are and also the product and the services that you provide.
Yeah, for having me. Thank you for the acknowledgement. That was beautiful.
I've been grateful to meet many people who have had to immigrate, and just their stories have really, for me, one of the things that I like sharing and working with people is just positive psychology. And so I think it's interesting when we go through hardships, how we can learn from those and learn to appreciate the day-to-day, right? So it's fascinating to me. So thank you again. How did you get started? Like you say that you learned how to diffuse, but how did you go from diffusing to entrepreneurial, right? Some part of that is surviving, but then that next step is that thriving part, really. What made you decide to go from point A to point B, or where did that kind of event occur in your life?
That's a great question. I think a lot of, if you just, and this could be a sweeping generalization and it could disempower a lot of people listening to this. So I just want to pre-frame that my intention of what I'm about to say is not to disempower anyone or to have some sort of sweeping generalization or put anyone in a bucket. But what I found consistent, at least with people in my life that are, that immigrate or that have immense amount of struggle when they're moving from one country to another, is I find that entrepreneurial spirit is just built inside of them, because they have to face so much adversity and so much emotional terror and breakdowns in communication and relationship, that when they come out of that, they just build this perseverance and resilience that a lot of times people who don't face that sort of adversity in their life don't end up having that contextualization, and it comes easy to them and they kind of just, whatever is available, they'll take. But, I find that, a lot of people who've immigrated that are my friends, like they have a similar mentality to me and my parents. And so, I think that, but there's also people who grow up in America who also face a lot of adversity and climb up and build that entrepreneurial spirit through their experiences too. So I don't have a real answer for you. I just know for like my life, what I can say is, the adversity is so important, because I really feel like if you remove the significance of and the meaning that you assign, right? Because there is no real inherent meaning to anything. It's only like the meaning you assign to it, right? And it's why you have two people that can go through the same experience in life and they can have a completely different outcome and a completely different outlook, because that's where it comes from. Their outcomes come from their outlook. And so there's a thing I teach in my closer school and in my entrepreneur circles with business owners is, if you can alter your perception, you can alter your reality. If you can alter your perception, you can alter your reality. And I get everyone kind of saying it over and over and over, because, my reality at 7 years old was my mom was working 18-hour days in the liquor store. She beat breast cancer twice because of all the stress and eating poorly and not sleeping for 20 years. She had breast cancer twice. And I saw like life didn't have to be that way. My mom didn't have to work 18-hour days. There were people who were working less and much happier. And so, I saw that like my mom might have not made the best choices for her health and made the best choices to put her in proximity. And so when I started reading books and going to seminars and hiring coaches and going through all that growth, I really started to reframe a lot of my past and see it as an opportunity. I think one thing that I see with consistent people, besides resilience and persistence and turning their adversity into some sort of ambition, Angela, is I see a consistent theme of being able to reframe losses and past mistakes or adversity into ambition and have an outlook of how this is amazing. I thank God every day that this happened to me because I get to create X, Y, and Z. And that's the difference that I see from people who are successful and happy. And I don't mean just successful financially. I mean, have amazing relationships, feel like they're living in their purpose. They feel like they're authentic and in their skin. They've taken care of their mind, body, and soul. They're out there with people, conscious about what's going on in people's life, not just all about them, right? So that's what I mean by successful. I have a different definition and different standard. I believe you can have it all. You can be full spectrum with everything that you want in your life: spiritual, relationships, personal, health, everything. You can have it all. And it starts with being able to reframe every single piece of adversity that you face in your day as like, oh my God, I'm glad that happened because I can create this now, right? And so that's the consistent themes I see with successful people. And I was just blessed to be able to get social worker help when I was 8 years old and struggling internally. Like I had a social worker named Bob Simon when I was 8 years old, and when I was 7 years old, and Maria knows this from our last podcast, when I was home alone, I was in a tragic fireworks accident. When we just passed 4th of July, right? I was a tragic fireworks accident where I accidentally burned my house down at 7 years old. And it was very traumatic for me because my mom didn't have house insurance or homeowners insurance. And we were living in a motel for a whole year and a half, up to 2 years, couch surfing, living out of 3mm trash bags. And I was responsible, and I was getting teased at school. Kids were calling me an arsonist. People calling me satanic. People were calling me the devil's child, right? And so that adversity, as a kid, I became so angry as a kid all the time because I was a victim. I was a victim of what was going on. And it created like a lot of like disease in my body. I was just so ill all the time as a kid. And it wasn't until Bob Simon and a few coaches and a few therapists and a few people really got me to see like why this can be the most amazing thing in my life that happened. And I had communication issues. Like I had blocks, I would stutter, and I had lisps, and I would see a speech therapist, but really they thought I was autistic. They misdiagnosed me as autistic and then reversed it and said that you just have PTSD. Like, and I didn't know what PTSD as a kid was. And they
Right.
just said trauma, you're experiencing trauma. That's all they said. And so once I was able to see that my trauma was how I was experiencing it, and I was able to reframe my trauma and work with energy healers, working with therapists, work with coaches from sports teams, and channel my anger through martial arts and combat sports and wrestling. And then I became a leader on my wrestling team in high school. And I had to kind of kick all the bad communication and all the, making people wrong mentality and assigning meanings to things, because I was no longer doing wrestling for myself. I was being a leader on the team. And so I feel like leadership and throwing people who have trauma into leadership and coaching them and finding coaches to help them through that process and processing feelings and emotions and reframing those things is so critical for kids who are having issues with mental illness, and I think it's so critical that we support people who are dealing with mental illness and give them opportunities of leadership and help them reframe their past and help them experience life not through their just feelings from the past, but help them rewire their feelings and rewire their thoughts as ambition. And it wasn't until I rewired my adversity into like, this is the greatest thing that ever happened to me, was burning my house down, was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because now my communication blocks were my mess, and now my message is helping people with communication. And I think that's truly where, like, you find artists and entertainers and people who are experienced, like people who have experienced the most emotional pain in life, they tend to be like so gifted in the arts and performance arts. Why is that? Well, it's because their gifts came from so much pain, and they're realizing there's gifts through expression. And I think that when we as a society come together and move the consciousness to not make people wrong for what they deal with, but show them how they can channel it through performance arts or combat sports, or channel that anger and that adversity through some sort of leadership mechanism. Like, that's my ultimate goal, is to create some sort of leadership program for kids where they can go through that path that I did as a kid, where they can feel loved, they can feel in a position where they can serve others, and they can feel like they can reframe their past, and they can have a support. Like, that would be like my ultimate dream. I just have somehow found a way to co-found a nonprofit to do some of the stuff that's connected with my family and the adversity there. But ultimately, I know that I'm expressing my adversity through my communication and leadership programs, and I want to grow something even bigger for kids one day. And that's in a long-winded answer, Angela, that's how I can share my experience of why I decided it was a choice. It all comes down to a choice. And sometimes kids and people don't feel like they have a choice because they don't have someone in their corner telling them they believed in them, like my wrestling coach did, telling them they believed in them like my mom always did, no matter when she bailed me out of jail twice as a kid in my teenage years for doing stupid stuff because I was acting out because I hadn't healed yet, right? And so we all just need to forgive ourselves and forgive our parents and forgive our past, because it's not about our past, it's about what we create day to day that really defines who we are. And people just don't live that way as if it's real, because most of who we are is unconscious. And so if our subconscious is programmed from the past and being a failure and being someone who's painful or hurts people or who is bad and does things like burns his house down, like if we just say that we're that person, we're going to keep living our past and keep attracting more of what we had in the past. And so my goal in life is to let people know that you can alter your reality if you could just alter your perception. You can alter your perception if you just reframe every little thing that happened to you that was traumatic or painful as the most amazing, grateful thing that ever happened to you. And that's like my goal in life, is to leave people with that.
Okay. Interesting. I like it.
Yeah, and I agree 100%. It's similar to, some of the things that I've said, even with some of my own past traumas, that, it's at this point now, coming on the side of it, that I'm thankful for it. But that takes a while to get to that point. It's not something that you can be grateful for it until you're through the hard part and toward the healing part. So, it's different maturity.
So true.
What you're going through.
when we talk about conflict resolution and teaching people in our leadership series also, we talk about name and reframe, right? You come into an emotional event, not necessarily, we're talking in maybe a more corporate setting, but so not always to the extreme that you're discussing, but understanding that you can come into it and your perception does matter. So but the first step is naming it, right? Like recognizing what the situation is, putting that into context, and then do the spin, right? As you were saying, naming and reframing. So understanding how that as a power tool can be in each one of our toolboxes, right? Can be really super, super powerful. I just used a bunch of words over and over again. Sorry about that. But you just gave us a very, very extreme example of your entire life of using that tool of naming and reframing. And I think we can also shrink it down for people who have not always been through as extreme situations, and yet it still applies.
I love that. Thank you for addressing what was in the space. And I don't mean to like take over the conversation or give you all these stories and long-winded answers, because it could really occur for other people that it's just about me and my stories and what I want. I just think it's important for us to know each other and know each other's stories and where we come from, because then we can support each other better and know like what our needs are. And so I appreciate you making it actionable and taking what I just said and putting it into a very actionable framework for people to implement. And that's awesome that you're addressing kind of what's in the space, maybe for people who aren't really experiencing life that way or hadn't been through some tremendous amount of trauma, because I do speaking engagements, and sometimes people do come up to me after the talk and they never experience any of that pain or frustration.
Right.
They want to know how they can actually bring their gifts to the world, because they feel like their life was really good and they almost feel disempowered that other people's lives are harder or in some sort. So I also don't want to disempower anyone who might think this is some sort of sob story or, hey, look at me, oh, poor me, right? So that's not the goal and the intention here. So I appreciate you addressing that, Angela. That was awesome.
Thanks. I don't know. I like what you're saying, and it works really well, right? So it's very powerful.
Yeah, and you know something, Johnny, I can unpack everything that you said in like with a 3-hour conversation, but something you mentioned earlier, I kind of want to go back to. And that's when you were talking about your nonprofit and your for-profit business and dealing with sales and taking the sales rep out or having them take themselves out of the conversation and dealing with the customer themselves, the empathy that's needed, the understanding that's needed to obtain the sale. Can you explain that a little bit more?
You're on mute, Johnny.
You're mute, babe.
Johnny, you're on mute.
You're muted.
You muted yourself.
You still muted?
Nope,
you're muted. I mean, I could answer that question. My background's in sales, but they don't want to talk to me.
Yeah, we can hear your opinion. Oh, no.
Oh, we lost it.
He'll come back.
Well, listen, I'm from the world of motivational interviewing. That's what I do. You know what I mean? So I really just wanted his perspective. He actually mentioned it, and I wanted to really hear his perspective on it, because that was some really good stuff that he mentioned. But
yeah.
Okay.
You can tell he's got like
I'll be back.
the long-standing sales experience. Listening to him reminds me a lot of trainings I've received. Hey, Johnny, you're back.
Yeah, it said
It
said the software something went wrong with StreamYard and booted me out. But if I could kindly interject and answer your question, Ray, thank you for that. That was an awesome question. So with sales reps, again, there's something we go over. The first thing I go over is the 4 levels of competency, right? You have the conscious competency, the conscious incompetency, right? Where you're aware of something that you're good at, right? So you can do something about it, right? And there's the unconscious competency, where you're unaware of something that you're good at that you do really well, right? So, and then there's the unconscious incompetency, where you're not good at it and you're not aware that you're not good at it. And then there's the a conscious incompetency, where you are aware that you're not good at something. So it's really important that when you train sales reps that you let them know of these 4 levels of competency, because if they don't understand these 4 levels of competency, they're never going to want to work on themselves and get better. Right. And so you got to create a context of growth and why it's important to grow, because we all can grow. I have gifts and also I have barriers. You know, Maria has gifts. She has barriers. Angela, Chanel, Ray, anybody watching this, we all have gifts and we have barriers. And guess what? It's totally awesome that we have barriers, because that's what links us. That's what allows us to contribute and grow and work together, is when your gifts meet my barriers and vice versa. That's how a consciousness gets collected, right? A collected consciousness is all about that. And so, so once I get the sales reps to kind of give up that, sure, they're confident, sure, they're courageous, sure, they're really good at what they do, and there's more, right? That yesterday's transformation is tomorrow's ego trip, right? That there's so much more available for them. Now they show up raising their hand saying, where can I grow? So that's the first step, is getting your sales reps to admit that they're super awesome at what they do. They're incredible people, both on the phones and off the phones, and there's barriers. And if they want to be someone who's always humble, but also really good at what they do, they have to adopt that 1% better every day mentality. Otherwise, they'll do what I did in the early 20s, and I pissed a lot of people off on sales calls. Like, I would disempower people, I would talk over them, I would interrupt them, and I wouldn't really listen. And it wasn't until I actually worked with the best sales trainer that you'll never find sales training from, Lena Powers, amazing female that worked for Tony Robbins for 15 years. And she was on my sales floor at my first sales job. And she took me under her wing, and she taught me about masculine energy and feminine energy, and how masculine is about creating and asking questions and being assertive and dominant, right? And the feminine is about empathetic and listening and understanding and being with someone, right? And then I realized, oh my God, I'm so masculine in the way I sell. And it's because when you grow up in a Middle Eastern home, especially mine, it's always people just yelling at each other, getting in a fight, but it's totally normal. And then you eat dinner later like nothing happened, right? And so I realized that doesn't work in all my other social and work settings to talk that way. So I had to redevelop the way I communicate and the way I listen. And that's why I put myself on mute a lot, because we all have a natural, pull, a gravitational pull when we like something that someone says and we want to say something about it. And like, it's so hard to keep it inside of us, and we have to train ourselves to listen. Right. So Ray, it's a 3-step process. It's getting people to admit they want growth in the sales floor. It's teaching them how to truly listen through rituals. Okay. So I developed these rituals of what I call as a high ticket salesperson's rituals. And we do pre-call, during call, post-call rituals. Because if you look at someone like Joe Dispenza, I don't know if you guys are Joe Dispenza fans, but I've done quite a bit of Joe Dispenza stuff, his meditation seminars, etc. And one of the things he really teaches is, if you want to change your personal reality, right, you have to change your personality. And if you look at your personality, it comes down to a set of actions that you've taken over time that become characteristics and personality traits. But before they were personality traits, they were behaviors. And before they were behaviors, they were really just habits. And so habits, rituals, synonyms there, right? So I just call them high ticket salespeople's habits, right? If you want to be a high ticket salesperson that's consistent, why salespeople lack consistency is they don't have good habits to support consistency. And so I walk them through pre-call, during call, post-call rituals that I have them adopt over time, not all at once so it doesn't overwhelm them. And they adopt one habit every single week, one ritual that supports them being a better listener, supports them having the right tonality and mood and cadence and energy on the call. It supports them in the way they listen to people, not just how they listen, but the way they listen, right? And so so to answer your question, Ray, your salespeople got to have good rituals. They have to have a context to grow. They have to want to listen to people, knowing that it empowers them instead of disempowers them. And then they have to have rituals that support them in the process.
And that actually leads to them, or I'm using the word twice. I'm sorry, I'm doing the same thing Angela did. That causes them to be leaders because if they're able to listen, if they learn how to listen, they actually are the leaders of wherever they are, and they'll actually have better reactions and really just better flow with their customers.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely. What's your experience with listening and breaking down, Ray? Like where did you develop how to listen so good? Like where did you get that habit? How did you develop it? When did you first really realize you had to develop it? I'm just curious.
I tell you something. I was like you. I'm in New York, right? And I used to work on Wall Street. Okay. So if you can imagine, I wasn't a broker, but I worked for a Wall Street firm that, was on the clock every day and selling. And listen, the one thing we had to do, you're on your phone. For those 8 hours from 9:30 until 4:30, you're on the phone and you're interrupting people, and it's about you selling. All I saw was a sheet, and if I didn't have ticks on that sheet every day to get to a certain level, I didn't make any money because I was commission only. And if I didn't make any money, I couldn't pay my bills. So in that aspect, yeah, you're not worried about listening to anybody. All you want to hear is yes. And the more no's that you get, I guess you get a little more anxious to get to the yes, right? So it wasn't until 2007 when I lost that job in the crash, and I had to learn, wow, I really need to learn how to sell. I need to learn how to be. So I got into the customer service space, and I was doing the same thing, and I wasn't selling. I was like, damn, I sold, XYZ. I can't sell a $29.99 product. What's wrong with me? And it was only then I began to understand the art of listening and being empathetic, and it takes a long time to learn how to listen. Yeah.
I'm right there with you. Awesome. Cool. I have a lot of friends from New York who went to Wall Street. So we'll have to connect another time. And I have a really good friend that's out there that I'm going to visit soon. So hopefully we can get together and get to know each other more. So that's awesome.
Sounds cool.
Yeah.
Right. I want to, if I can follow up on that, I think it's not so much learning how as practicing how. Mm-hmm. I can hear Johnny's words, right? I can hear what I'm supposed to do to practice. And so explicitly, I know it. But until it becomes an implicit habit that I'm practicing on a regular basis, knowing how isn't good enough when it comes to listening.
Oh, yeah, it's the practicum. It honestly is. I know Johnny will agree with me. It's the practicum. You really have to do it. It's like anything else, though. I used to coach football. I can teach anyone how to get into a 3-point stance, but it's you doing it 10,000 times to where it's comfortable for you. Then you know how to do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the rituals that we do, if anyone's watching this wondering what are these rituals, one of the rituals that we do during the call is we just put ourselves on mute and we count up to 5 Mississippi every time a prospect's done talking. And then we ask them and we do a check-in and say, is there anything else you'd like to share? Right? Just really creating a space for someone to show up and really feel heard. We're so used to people replying right away that it comes off like how it occurs for the prospect is you're trying to force an idea. You're trying to convince them of something when you're quick to answer, right? We all been there when we called a friend. We didn't really want advice from that friend or that family member. We just kind of wanted to be listened to. And they're just so quick to just try to give us the advice. And one of the things I teach when you're off the phone to these salespeople, because my commitment is that you're not just a leader on the phone, you're a leader in your life, right? And so, so time and time again, they find that when they bring up their ideas or their goals to family members, they're always quick to try to give them advice. And so there's this kind of tactic that we teach where it's ask for permission to have someone show up differently for you, right? So what does that look like? Well, when my brother wants to give me advice, when I just want him to listen to me, I say, hey, can I kindly ask you, Jacob, if you could just show up and just be a vessel, be a listening and just listen to what I'm saying? I'm actually not looking for advice. Can you be that brother? Can you put your just, hey, listen hat on for me, and I just ask that permission. And if you can't, hey, maybe it's not a good time and I should connect with someone else who would be willing to listen to me. And it's okay that you're not, right? And it's like, no, I am willing to listen to you. Okay, great. Awesome. So just kind of pre-framing conversations is really critical. Like pre-framing is so critical for how people perceive or interact with your communication. And so if you're not utilizing pre-frames, you need to be utilizing pre-frames because it allows prospects and people in your life to show up for you differently through permission. So we call this permissive-based language patterns, right? And we do a lot of that stuff in our ritual. So that's one example of a during call ritual of how we can improve someone's listening when they're a sales rep. Just so people listening are not like, this is very conceptual. I need this on the court. I need to understand what if I'm in the game, what do I do? Or like, what are you talking about when you say rituals or getting better at listening? And that's what I mean.
I was counting to 5 Mississippi. I wasn't really. It was just awkward silence. I had to say something. So, Chanel, you've been super quiet. You've been counting to like 1,000 Mississippi. So, why don't you go back?
I love that.
I don't know. So I like to listen. We didn't really introduce ourselves. So I'll introduce myself very briefly. So my background, I spent over a decade working in politics. And so doing political fundraising and political campaign management. And so a lot of what you say is things that I've had conversations with clients. And so most of my clients have been in leadership roles, leadership spaces, and uniquely, most of them have been transitioning out of one type of career into another type of career, right? And I always jokingly call myself the money honey, right? Because I love to talk about money. And so sales is just like my sweet spot. We could talk about sales for the rest of my life and it make me very happy, right? And so when I listen to you talk about it, it gets me excited. And I love learning from peers because it makes me smarter and it makes me feel better about the work that we're doing to see the industry shift gears, right? And so I guess I would ask you, because this happens to me all the time. I deal with clients who are often very seasoned, right? And so my most favorite and their least favorite is objections, right? Because I think that yeses are very easy to digest. I ask you, do you want to buy this product? If someone says yes, I'm like, absolutely, you want to buy this product, right? But the seasonality is that people are not going to always say yes to you. And even when you're the best fit, it may not be the right time. Sure. And so I'm also live on Instagram. And so one of my friends was like, wait. Well, what?
That's awesome.
Oh, I was going to say wait. I was like, okay.
I heard wait too.
So I'll ask you, because people ask me this all the time, could you talk about like permissive language and rituals? What do you do in those seasons when it's lean and you're just getting objections and you put on your best face, you've taken the Tony Robbins course and you are like empowered to the point that you can't sit still. You got to give yourself to people and it's just not translating. Like, what would be your advice to folks who are in that space?
Yeah, Chanel, I love your energy and thank you for giving us a background on you. And I love that you're in politics. I went to University of Chicago in the South Side. I lived 1 block away from Barack Obama. So anytime you would
come to Chicago.
Oh, really?
Chicago currently.
Oh, awesome. I lived in Hyde Park for 5 years. I love Hyde Park. It's so beautiful. So cool. We'll have to connect separately. So I love your energy, love your passion. I love that you're alive, just adding value to people through this conversation. So thank you for what you do. And to answer your question, I think it's really important to, I was a genetics major in college. A lot of people think I was marketing or business, but I was actually a science major in college. And I was
Wait, at University of Chicago?
Yes. Yeah.
Did you know this girl, Letitia Steele? I'm so sorry, y'all. No one ever studies genetics.
Letitia Steele, that sounds very I had like 14
studies genetics at University of Chicago, right?
I'm pretty sure I know who you're talking about. I'm better with faces than I am names. It's also been like almost
I'm waiting for the pizza conversation, but that's okay.
We're not
going to talk about that. You got to stay in rapport. We just got to say we love pizza, right? You got to go bigger. When you build rapport, I teach my salespeople, don't say New York pizza is worse than Chicago pizza. You're going to hurt rapport.
That's right. I'm coming to Chicago. Don't do that.
So we always go, hey, I love pizza too, right? Boom, go bigger, right?
So make valuable connections. Yeah,
always go bigger with rapport. You never go smaller. right? Oh, well,
Yes.
who's your team? Who's your football team? Let's not talk about that. We both love football. Let's carry on, right? So you redirect and go back to you're in rapport. You go bigger with rapport. That's one of the things I teach. So to answer your question, Chanel, I would say why being a genetics major has any relevance to what I'm about to say is the fact that science is really inside of sales, and everything has an art and a science to it, right? So the art is the expression and the willingness to carry the conversation outside the frameworks and to paint a picture with your prospect that's beautiful about the life that they want to create. That's the art. And then the science is hypothesize and test your hypotheses, right? So, you really have to kind of see what's going on case by case. And so I never like to just give a generalized answer. I always like to see what's actually working for you through your art and your performance and your expression, because if it's working for you, I don't want to impact that. I don't want to throw you off your game, right? And there's ability to grow through what's not working. And so the first thing that we do when we come into a company and we help a company that's at $100,000 a month or more grow to 200, 300, 400, 500K or $1 million a month, right? That's kind of our avatars. We help these companies go from 100 to $1 million a month. And how do we do that? Well, we first see where all the beautiful art is in the expression of the salespeople. What are they really good at, right? So we bring all those conscious, those unconscious competencies, right? They're unaware that they're good at it. And we bring those to the forefront. Hey, your reps are really good at building rapport, really good at tonality. And we bring that to the forefront so they can keep doing that. And then we take a scientific approach to where are they dealing, how are they dealing with objections? How, where could they get better? And we make sure, you'd be surprised, there's a lot of 7-figure companies and 8-figure a year companies that don't record their calls. Which, by the way, if you're listening to this and you're a 7 or 8-figure year company, you don't record your calls, that's illegal. So you have to do that because the FTC will come knocking on your door.
I've had a couple of clients that didn't do that. That's true.
Yeah. So make sure you record your calls and you're in compliance. You're not making income claims and time frames. You're not over promising, and you're not guaranteeing any results. These are reasons why doctors and lawyers don't guarantee anything when you see them, because they can lose their license. And so I want to see sales reps and business owners take this seriously, like medical professionals and legal professionals take seriously, right? Record your calls, be in compliance, and dissect scientifically what's working and not working, because everything else is just interpretation. It gets lost in how people perceive things differently, because we perceive things differently based on our unique life experiences. And where we clash and where we lose rapport with people, what I found was when we try to say that we're different, or we force that we're different onto others. And that's not the point. The point is, how are we the same? How are we relatable? How are we connected? How can we grow together, right? And so I find that business owners and sales reps just don't take an art and science approach to sales and figuring out what works and doesn't work. So if you don't measure it, it can't grow. And so you have to measure things, and you can't measure things unless you document things. So there's a whole flow when I work with a company on documentation, then measurement, and then recalibration and optimization. I have different stages that I take people through, because it's really important, critical for them to do the right things in each stage. To answer your question, Chanel. If I want to take a less conceptual, holistic approach and be really tactical right now on Instagram Live for people who are struggling with objections, well, first of all, make sure you are blocking objections in your marketing. Okay, so what are your common objections of your avatar, your prospect, the person who is your ideal customer? What are their most common objections? You don't know? The fastest way to do that is call people on your current client list and ask them what sort of objections they had before they jumped on board with your product and service. And then now you're grabbing scientific evidence of your hypothesis of what your objections are. Now you want to train 3 to 5 times a week on those common objections. Also, you want to block those objections in your marketing, in your email funnel, in your Instagram page, in your Facebook profile, in your YouTube channel and content, in your follow-up sequences, booking the calls and email marketing. You want to block objections every possible way, right? Why do you want to do that? Well, if you block objections, there's nothing to handle when you're on the call because they already build that trust. They know you care and they know you can help because you spent your time in your marketing and in your sales process with your salespeople creating assets that defeats their objections before they even come to the game. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, but let's take it a step further though, because as a sales rep, I want to also be in the mind of the consumer, right? So
Sure.
How would you teach your sales reps to be in the mindset of the customer so that they can not only anticipate objections, but eliminate objections completely? Take it a step further.
So
I had a question, but wait, before you go forward.
I'm sorry, Chanel.
Piggybacking on my last question, right? Because I think what you said was excellent. Recording yourself and playing it back. You talk about, companies that go from 100,000 to $1 million a month, right?
Yes.
A lot of the people who I work with have small businesses, so they are scaling from, trying to get their first 6-figure month or in between like 5 and 6 figures, right? So much smaller, less capacity. So if I sell digital courses, right? I teach people how to create, launch, and sell digital courses, right? Awesome. So we can use me. That's fine. I have 2 staff, right? And so right now my staff are running through sales objections. What would you say small scale, right? Because like Ray told me a couple of weeks ago, a lot of people who we talk to may just be getting started. If I have a 5-person or less shop and we're really trying to fine tune, and we found the last few weeks we are objection heavy, besides recording yourself, and these are just like quick tips, right? I know you don't like to generalize, but just in your multiple year experience, what are some things you can do to just either kickstart that positive mindset, or what are some rituals maybe they can adapt? You talk about rituals, right? The pre-call ritual, the call ritual, but a lot of people are doing DMs, right? So they're not calling people, they're DMing them on Instagram and Facebook. What are some rituals around like the digital only product space that may not be selling that you can provide? Just like some small steps that could make a big impact. Sorry, Ray.
Yeah, no worries, Chanel. And not to say I don't work with companies that are less than $100,000 a month. I have products and services for companies that are from 20 to $100,000. And what I find that the companies that are from 20 to $100,000 is they don't have the capacity to improve their products because they're marketing, selling, and delivering their product. And so what they need to do is work on their product and make it better so that it's more scalable. And so they need to get off the phones and hire sales professionals that I recruit for them. And to get into the mind, Ray, of the prospect, what I do is I recruit first from people who have an affinity to that product because they've purchased that product from you or someone similar in the space trying to solve the same problems. And so what we do in our closer community is we create congruent closers, people who have principles, passion, and purpose that align with that of their prospects. So we have a formula for recruiting, and we go after people who have market affinity, product affinity, have bought the product or have bought similar products in the space first, right? And the second people we go after are the people who have experience in sales. And what I found when I recruited people who just had experience with sales, they got the role, but they didn't want the role. So it's something I pulled from EOS system. Get it, want it, capacity to do it. GWC, EOS, great system. For some parts of it can be really good for some businesses. Other parts are too much, right? So get it. One thing I like is GWC from their frameworks. So GWC is, do they get the role? Like when you're recruiting them and onboarding them, are you documenting how you're taking people from outbound message to from interested to curious to serious and committed to solving that problem? Like, are you really good at documenting that process? So when we go and recruit, we want to make sure we have an onboarding checklist in place so that the people we recruit you have the best chance to succeed in a 2-week ramp up period. Any ramp up period that takes longer than 2 weeks causes a churn and burn in salespeople. That means you're not a business owner, you're not a leader enough to know how to get someone results. If you're taking someone who's bought the product and has sales experience and they can't make a sale in a 2 to 4 week time period, either your product needs to get developed better and needs to actually work better and produce better results, or you're just not good at recruiting and onboarding and you need my help, right? So that's kind of what I do with the 20 to 100K companies is I give them a recruiting and onboarding process where they can document their sales process, their prospecting, their outbound, their inbound, all their lead gen activities and their sales process, taking them from the first message all the way to them being a paid client, documenting that entire process and making it easily consumable by anyone. Like if it doesn't pass the grandma tool, like an 80-year-old grandma that has market affinity and has some sales experience, couldn't come on and go through your checklist and your onboarding process and actually make a sale in a 2-week period or even 4-week period max, then there's something going on with either your product and or your pricing of your product for the marketplace, right? Or your positioning. So pricing, product positioning, pricing, product positioning. There's something going on.
Question. I don't know if you want to.
Does that answer your question, Chanel? That like, if you really want you really want your salespeople to win or to grow your sales, is like you as a business owner, you need to get off the phone. You need to get off the phone and work on your product. Once you're at 20 to 40K a month and you've gone through 2 or 3 promo cycles in a digital course or a coaching program, and you have at least 5 to 10 case studies with exceptional results, you have product market fit, right? So because you have product market fit, now you need to make your product more scalable, meaning it can exist without you eventually, right? And that might take 6, 12, 18 months to do. It takes most coaches 6 to 12 months to do that, right? Between hiring admin and all the different cycles of bringing on your first client success manager, right? And I'm not an expert in that stuff, but I do partner with experts who are good at replicating you in client success so that your product is more scalable and then you could actually grow it to 100K or more. A lot of mistakes business owners make is they just spend time doing the marketing, sales, fulfillment, and they just get burnt out. And they can never freaking grow their business because they're trying to do everything, and they're like a control freak. And being a control freak is not unique to me and you. It's everybody. Human beings are just control freaks. We all just want to drive. We all want to wear our clothes the way we do. Like we have to have some sort of control because we feel safe. Like, so there's nothing wrong with control, and it impacts you from hiring people. So you have to give up control and hire people. But go after the people in your industry or go after a client that loves your program, that has the capacity to want to grow as a sales rep in your role. That's the fastest way to be in the prospect's mind. To answer Ray's question is recruit from a better framework.
Yep.
I agree wholeheartedly. The most sales my company ever got was when I stopped, when I hired my assistant who does almost all of the sales, and people are like, but you love to sell. It's like, yeah, but that's not what brings me joy, right? I can sell anything to anybody. I've done it, right? Like I've done campaigns, I've worked in investment sales. I can literally sell anything. I know that about myself. I've actually sold a car.
My wallet.
Sell me my wallet.
Sell me my wallet.
I actually sold a car. When I was buying my car, I sold a car. Like, that's just who I am. But I don't enjoy, like, I can't do both, right? Like, I can't be everything for the company. And so you can teach folks, like you say, who are passionate, how to sell. And so I just got out of my own way. And when I tell people that, they're always like, really? How do you handle that? I'm like, it's easy. I know I'm good at it and I can teach it, right? Like, I guess that's the confidence of it all, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's because you believe in your product and service, and you're more passionate about helping people get results than you are in sales. And that's how you have to be as a business owner. At some point, you got to be really passionate at sales. And if you're a business owner and you can't close a few $100,000 of your product and service, then there's something going on with your product positioning or price, right? So if you can't be the first closer, and one mistake I see is people who are at 0 to 20,000 want to hire me, and I have to say no to them. And they're like, well, why can't you take me on if you're supposed to be so good at this? Well, it's because you don't have product market fit, right? You have to get product market fit. You have to go through a few promo cycles and get case studies, because nobody's going to be like, in a tech company, your product market fit only happens when you have your first 100 customers at least, right? So no one's going to give you any money for your seed, your first seed round of funding if you don't have product market fit, because there's no traction there, right? And I see a lot of business owners do is just churning their wheels because they really don't believe in themselves, or they haven't developed their skills to produce results. So they deal with this imposter syndrome, and then they sell people, but they don't get them the best results, and they don't ever achieve product market fit. And it's because they're trying to do too much in their product and service, and they're really not carving out a specific problem. And it's because they're making up the problem in their head, like most failed tech founders, right? The most failed tech companies are the ones that just build and build and build and build and don't talk to their prospects and don't talk to their customers. So you have to be out there with your customers, surveying your customers and talking to customers. And so if you're not booking at least 30 to 50 calls before you create your product, then you need to do better product market research. So you got to take 30 to 50 calls and identify what the problem is. Yeah, sure, you could see other people doing something and you can copy them, but their sales reps and them as a business owner, they believe in their product and service so much more than you do because it came from within instead of external, and they're going to just outwork you and do better than you. So it's best that you just find something that you really want to do and you actually build the skills and produce the results for people and work with at least $200,000-$300,000 worth of clients and make sure that you have at least an 80% success, like 80% like satisfaction rate or higher, and you have at least a 60% of your clients saying, yes, I want to raise my hand for your next program. Like if you have less than 60% of people not wanting to buy your first program, then go to your second program, you have a product deficiency and you need to improve your product. You don't need to sell more or hire salespeople. That's not what you need to do, right? And and Stacy, thank you for asking your question. And I'll give someone else an opportunity, like Ray and Chanel and Angela and Maria. You guys are all really just awesome at sales. You guys are so good. From your life experience, I'd love to hear your feedback on maybe your experience on how soon do you place your sales reps on the phone? And I can answer it too, but I'd like to give other people an opportunity to share their experience too. That's what Stacy from the comments asked. I don't know if that was okay for us to answer.
No, that's why I put it up there. But
cool.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll go since I'm already talking. I mean, for me, I don't think there's like a quote unquote magic moment. I think it's going to be very much dependent on when the person you're training is ready, more than it is like a magic date on a calendar for me.
Well, I'm a trainer. I do it every day. And in certain organizations, there's a certain time frame. 2 weeks, this is the training program. You're on the floor in 2 weeks, and that's the end of it. And a lot of people fail because they have that expectation in their mind. And when they reach that, I guess, plateau, they can't do it. For some reason, there's a block in that person's mind, and it really depends on the training itself. I personally think that there has to be in a training module, and I know we're like 3 minutes, because this is going to be a short answer. In the training module, there has to be practicum experience. There has to be that point where, listen, I can teach you everything on the board, and I can teach you everything that you can learn mentally. But until you actually do it in the practicum, you're not going to get this training. You're not going to know what to expect when you're on the phone, when the bullets are flying, we used to say in the customer service game. It's just not going to happen. So, just my experience, unless you have a training practicum where you're actually, they're actually on the phone, they're actually selling, that could be an impossible gauge. It really can.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. I think for me, just so I can chime in. So what I do is a 2-week ramp up period. And in that ramp up period, they are experiencing live calls and talking to prospects through shadowing. So in the first week, I have them shadow sales reps that are already existing and have a clear path to success, or shadow the business owner. And what they'll do is come in on mute, or they'll listen in on the call, and they'll be on a live call. And what they have them do is make reads and have them type out what they would say or how they would respond to the prospect. And then after the call, we have 15-minute huddles for those shadow calls, and we get the salesperson to explain what was going on in the call and how to lead that prospect to success. And the business owner will give that sales rep feedback. So it's a combination of being on live calls like Ray. I love that you said that, because getting them in the game is the fastest way to have them grow. and then giving them a clear path to success in the training process. So if your onboarding doesn't show them clearly from the first outbound or inbound phone call or message to the sale, then you're not documenting your sales process correct. And getting them to explain it to you, it's not enough for them to just go through the content. They've got to come on the morning huddles. And what we do when they're training every day for 30 minutes, they're coming on the morning huddles, and we're asking them questions on how we can support them better and where we could help them and what they're seeing and how they're reading the conversations, and getting them to vocalize what's happening in the conversations from reviewing recorded calls from past sales reps, reviewing the live shadow calls, and reviewing the frameworks and the training library that I help the business owner put together. So it's a very involved and immersive process, but immersion, I find, is the only way that you can get someone good. But you got to equally get them out of the game, looking at the game, optimizing, recalibrating, improving. And this is where most business owners go wrong. They hire sales reps, they give them the onboarding process, and they go do something else in the company. And they're not leading the salesperson to success. And they come to me and they say, well, the salesperson is not as good as you said it was. And I said, okay, well, have you been doing live shadowing? Have you doing your morning huddles? Are you checking in with the closer with these templates and frameworks I gave you? Right? And 9 times out of 10, it's no. And I say, okay, go try that for a week or two. And then we'll follow up every couple of days with you to check in. And I'll check in with the business owner every couple of days after they implement that. And they're like, you're so right. You're so right. Like, they need immersion. They need check-ins. They need to sell you on what they're learning, right? You want to be a good closer as a business owner? Get your salespeople to teach you how your sales process works even better than you do. Have them have more conviction than you. The highest form of knowing something is teaching it. Right? Yeah. So if your sales reps aren't at the end of their 2 weeks teaching how to close people in your process, then your onboarding process or you as a leader needs to show up differently.
Awesome. All right. Well, we are 5 minutes over, so we're going to go ahead and end right here. But enjoy this conversation. I feel like we could talk for another hour at this point, but we don't have the time. So maybe we'll just have you back on again soon, Johnny.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. This crew is amazing, and I'll make sure I do a better job of giving everyone an opportunity to speak more, because you guys are all really good at what you do and have amazing life experiences and sales experience. I'm sure I can learn a lot from you and how to show up differently too. So thank you.
This is about you, brother. You're the guest. This is about you, man. We learn from you. That's why you're here. We appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing.
And real fast, Johnny, tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, so I'm Johnny the Closer on Instagram, and on Facebook I'm the Johnny Anton, and LinkedIn as well, the Johnny Anton, TheJohnnYanton. Also, our nonprofit's called ThroughYou.org, and where that name came from is life doesn't happen to you as a victim, as it was for me for many years and my family, but it actually happens for you and through you, right? And through me, right? So. And it's all about getting out of the world of victimization and creating sustainability. So if you guys are ever interested in coming on treks to build schools or water wells or do cool stuff with entrepreneurs like yourself, we take a lot of business owners out to these treks because they just work and they just have no presence to being connected with people and giving back, and they're tired of just writing that check and they want to roll up their sleeves and come out to the villages for 5, 6, 7 days. So would love if you would check out the ThroughYou.org page. Yeah,
love it.
That is so cool.
Been great. And again, thank you so much. And thanks to the co-host. We'll be on again next week at Tuesday, 1 p.m. Eastern time. And see you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.